Bruins Beat is brought to you by Ice Picks and the Game Time app.
And welcome into the Bruins Beat, presented by Prize Picks. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $50 back when you play just $5. And we're presented by Game Time. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $20 off that first purchase. Terms apply. You want to go Bruins preseason, Bruins regular season, go check out our friends over at Game Time. I am here with Joe Pohoryles. Joe, what is up?
Not much. Just waiting for the regular season to start, pretty much. Just like, pretty much every Bruins fan, I imagine, trying to wait and see what the final roster is going to look like.
Yeah, it's funny. Like in the I'm so excited for the preseason to arrive, and then it hits, and then I'm like, all right, I want to see regular season hockey. Yeah. Like I've seen enough. It's only been 2 games. I know this will annoy a lot of people. We're recording this prior to Thursday night's game against the Rangers. I wasn't able to record Friday, so my apologies. Poke the Bear and Pucks with Haggs will be out, so you'll be able to kind of get the breakdown on Thursday night's game. But yeah, preseason hockey, it's good, but I'm at the point where I'm like, all right, I want these games to matter a little bit. And it's good. Like, I like preseason in the sense that you do get to see those young guys. You do get to see, guys like Trevor Kuntar and Providence who are trying to work their way into being call-ups. And then the big storyline, obviously, is you get to see the young guys who want to make a spot on the NHL roster. And that's where we will start. So have you been at every day of camp so far?
Mostly, like, probably maybe missed 1 or 2 days, I think. But for the most part, there every day, I'd say. Yeah.
So far, I mean, obviously one of the big things is Fabian Lysell. And Fabian Lysell had a pretty forgettable showing on Sunday against the Rangers, and then he comes out on Tuesday night and puts together a good performance against the Caps. Where are you at with Lysell and potentially making this roster?
I think Brad Marchand kind of summed it up where his take the other day was like, yeah, him and Merkulov both looked good on Tuesday, but they're gonna have to be a lot better if they want to make the team. And I agree. I think they looked good in spurts. And obviously, Lysell had the goal. Merkulov set up Brazeau in for his goal. But as far as jumping into that spot, and it might be tougher for them than others, where Lysell at least is expected to jump into the second right wing. Earning a top 6 spot on an NHL roster, that's going to be tougher than any of the other guys just battling for that, 4th line spot or bottom 6 role. So Lysell is the type of player where he's probably not going to fit into that bottom 6 role. So he's kind of has to make that, find somewhere in the middle 6, one of those lines to ingrain himself. And I wouldn't be surprised if he is on the roster. I just don't know if he's done what's necessary to really seize that spot.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. Where, Sunday's performance, I left there. I left thinking, what is this is a big camp, and I hear the pro Fabian Lysell people being like, oh, but he's not playing with real NHL talent. It's like, okay, well, I want to see him drive play. I want to see him take initiative. I want to see him win his board battles, all that stuff. But then, Tuesday night against the Caps, you see that really nice goal, and you just see what he can be. And it's like, oh man, like if you can get that 80 to 90% of the time, that's a great top 6 forward in the NHL. And I know there are some shortcomings on defense and things like that. But, to me, like I've said it all off season, I want to see what he looks like on that second line. And I don't now you have Matt Poitras in the mix. Like now Matt Poitras is in the mix for that second line right wing spot, or at least just on right wing in general. And Poitras looks really good.
He does.
And I like that. To me, like Poitras fits more of sort of that balance where it's like, all offseason it was like, do you want Morgan Geekie or a Trent Frederick in that right wing spot, or do you want Fabian Lysell, which is 2 very different ends of the spectrum there. But now it's like, all right, the happy medium is Matt Poitras, because you get that young, exciting, high ceiling player, and you get someone who's also responsible. So to me, like right now, like I was talking to Connor yesterday, he likes Morgan Geekie for that second line right wing spot. I've wanted to see Lysell on the spot for a while, and who knows? I mean, Lysell, could have a huge night on Thursday, but to me, like Poitras would kind of fit in both sides of that. And I think I think the Bruins would enjoy being able to be like, hey, we do have a young guy in the top 6 and who's also responsible.
Yeah, I think looking at his game, again, it's just one game and it's the preseason and this is sort of the time of, drawing big assumptions.
We're going off literally a grain of salt. We are going off a little bit of a grain of salt.
Yeah, but if you looked at Poitras' game, I don't know how you could argue he's not one of the top 9 forwards on the team or in Bruins camp. I think whether he's at right wing or if they fit him in a center spot and shift Frederick and Geekie over to the right or however they want to mix it up, he's not playing like a guy that, you send him down the AHL just because you can and work him. But obviously they're going to be cautious with his recovery, but he talked about the weight that he gained this offseason. He was playing strong with the puck. He looked like he didn't hold back at all, in his moments in the game the other day. And so I think whether it's in that second line right wing spot or if they want to put him on Frederick's wing, they've been playing Frederick at center with Poitras on the right wing. I don't know if they want to make that like the third line and put Geekie up to the right. Whichever way you spin it, it seems like Poitras, as it stands this far in the preseason, is the best fit for one of those spots over Lysell or whoever else.
Yeah, and by the way, I want to correct myself. Lysell is not in that Thursday night lineup. I thought they would put him in, and I just looked at the roster.
Oh, no,
he's not. He's not in. Poitras is though. So it would be curious. He'll already have played by the time people listen to this. So what a great game by Matt Potter. What a game he had against the Rangers Thursday night. He was buzzing around out there.
Well, he'll be playing with Pastrnak and Zacha if the lines from this morning indicate anything, which they should. So he'll be playing with NHL players alongside him as well. So that should only help his case theoretically.
So there you go. Again, and I think, in day one of camp, it's funny because day one of camp, they had Johnson with Coyle and Lysell in that line. And, again, I think Sweeney kind of said as much back in the summer of all right, this is Lysell's chance, to sort of, or a young guy like Lysell to take hold of that second line right wing spot. It might just end up being Poitras. And again, I think a lot of people want Poitras to be a center long term. But again, coming back from shoulder surgery, still being a young guy in the NHL, you don't have to force him into that middle spot. And also one thing I was watching with Poitras, especially in that first game, was sort of all right, he comes off shoulder surgery. Is he going to be hesitant? Is he going to, but he's just so elusive, protecting pucks, finding space, to me, whether you're going against, the most veteran NHL defenseman or a rookie, those skills are going to be effective no matter what. And he's good at getting himself out of danger and not getting crushed. Because I know he gained weight. He still is a little bit smaller than some others, and he's young. So you do have that. But to me, I keep looking at Poitras, and he's grown on me as that second line right wing spot. Because all offseason, it was is it going to be Poitras or Merkulov for the third line center spot? To me, it feels like Poitras. I mean, they clearly or at least going to start him on the wing. And I agree with you. Through one game, again, we have not seen Thursday night's game against the Rangers. I don't know how you send him down at this point.
And I think another big factor is not even in Lysell or Poitras or any of the players' control, and it's Jim Montgomery's status as head coach and what he needs to accomplish this season.
Bingo.
He's in the final year of his deal. You asked the question, I believe, last week or sometime the other day, what the contract talks are like. I think Sweeney said that they have started talks, but that's obviously no guarantee or indication that anything's coming. Jim Montgomery, just in his status of his contract, can't afford to throw Lysell in there and wait and see and hope that it clicks right away. He, at least to start, or maybe towards the end of the season, maybe he can mix him in when injuries start to pile up later in the year. But whatever it is, he needs to ice the best lineup that he can, because he's coaching for his job quite literally, just based on what his job status is like after the end of the season.
Well, that's the other part, and you nailed it there. If he's not extended at the end of camp, he's coaching for his job this year. So can you afford to put Fabian Lysell in that second line right wing spot? And potentially piss off Brad Marchand. He's made a couple of comments throughout, camp and captain's practices of sort of insinuating no, we want a guy like a Morgan Geekie there, someone who's more reliable. And I think Matt Poitras kind of fits that same build of and Poitras probably has a little bit more of an offensive ceiling than a guy like Morgan Geekie. But can you afford to put someone like Lysell there who, yes, going off the 2 games that he's played, we're gonna have Twitter highlights. There's gonna be a goal here or there where you're like, holy crap, that kid can fire it, or oh my god, he's got a lot of skill. But then there are gonna be plays where it's like, man, he completely missed his assignment in the defensive zone, or oh my god, that turnover, or oh, this or that. And can Montgomery afford to have those mistakes happen and potentially either lose games or get off to some sort of slump or have trouble scoring early in the season? I don't know if you can. That's why sort of the extension makes the difference in maybe who he picks, where it's like, he was brought in as someone that was going to be good with young players, and you can be the best coach in the world with young players, but if you have 1 year left on your deal and you're a lame duck coach, you want guys who are going to be reliable. You want guys who maybe they're not going to, have the 50-point ceiling, but they're not going to give up a lot in the D zone or have to be pushed. And you're right. And that's another whole thing. That's a whole nother can of worms that to me, I don't think people are talking about that enough. Because I think it was was it ESPN? Someone did a predictions for each team. I think it was ESPN. And their prediction was this will be Montgomery's last year as head coach.
Yeah, it was ESPN, I think today or yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, it was ESPN. And again, I think actually a friend of mine sent it in a friend group chat. It's what a random place to get that, because I hadn't seen the story, but they said, at his preseason news conference, Bruins GM Don Sweeney mentioned there have been talks between the team and head coach Jim Montgomery about a contract extension, which is A, different than signing one, and B, not an indication of job safety, even if he had signed one. And then goes on to say, the Bruins have been eliminated, blah, 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 blah. And obviously they're not going to change GMs because they never change general managers. So yeah, there needs to be some sort of clarity, because I think it affects a lot of lineup decisions throughout. I want to get more into some training camp stuff. The Montgomery situation, I think, will be for a while. I don't do you see them signing something soon on that?
Not
enough's been said.
I feel like even historically, the coach extension versus the player extension, there's not typically as much talked about with that, across the board. There are a lot of whisperings if they lost to Toronto last year in the playoffs, he probably would have been fired that day. Pastrnak scores in overtime, make it to the second round. He lives to see the last year of his contract. So I don't know. I think Sweeney's probably more focused on Jeremy Swayman. I don't think there's any. I don't think there's going to be any extension talks for the coach before number 1 gets signed. That's what my best bet would be, I'd guess.
Yeah, and I also think in Sweeney's answer to that question, he sort of not hid behind, but was able to use the thing we're gonna do a rule here. We're not going to talk about numbers and extensions and things like that. Sort of using the Swayman thing but then he did say, yes, we have been talking about it, which again does not mean. I think if I could go back in that moment, my follow up question would have been, and I think Monday is the press conference with everybody, the Jacobs and Neely, and I don't know if I'll be there or not, but my question would be, do you want him long term? Because I think because again, Montgomery's checked off all the boxes except postseason success, but that's a big freaking box. And are you going to wait until they've won 2 rounds in April and then extend him in May? That's a hard thing to do to a guy with a family here and everything. So I'm curious to see what they end up doing in the Montgomery situation. I want to get into Swayman stuff. I want to get into more from camp. But first, quick word from our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. 1 Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on Prize Picks every week in September. That's right, only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss this deal on Prize Picks because it's gone when September ends. Prize Picks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money, even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineup stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, your picks are still live. Big questions going into the football season. Will Patrick Mahomes throw for more or less than 267.5 yards one week? Will Jalen Hurts throw for 240.5 passing yards another? Download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus because it's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Now, back to the show. So another thing from camp that's been a little emerging storyline is Elias Lindholm. Out for this week, no games, day to day, according to Montgomery, no clarity based on what his injury is. You don't see a ton of it, but I think there is that little worry that this becomes a nagging thing. If it's day to day, I feel like that stuff always lingers for quite a while, even after the player comes back. Not exactly what you want out of the number one center that you just signed for a crap ton of money. Are you worried at all about Lindholm's status?
Not yet. I mean, I feel like
that's the key. Not yet.
Yeah,
not yet.
I feel like because you never I feel like teams or teams will only be as willing or forthcoming with injury news or notifications as they'll share as little as possible. Basically, you can ask them straight up. They'll say not to worry. I don't think so. Jim Montgomery said yesterday, I believe, that there are no serious injuries on the roster, and he expects everyone who has not appeared in training camp to be back next week. We'll see if that actually holds up, but I think based on the fact that even with the healthy players, he's slowly working veterans back into the preseason game lineup. He's not throwing everyone in there at once. I think if by the second to last game or the last game, he's not there or isn't practicing, I think that's when it's time to worry. But I think for now, they probably just don't want to rush him in. But I think it kind of hinges on the timing of that and if they end up actually coming back next week and how they end up being used.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, this is not the time to push him. This is not the time to, risk an injury, re-injuring anything or making something worse. Because again, you're going to need him quite a bit throughout this season. So I agree with you. But I think it's something to watch and keep an eye on. Other things with training camp, I mean, Georgi Merkulov, had a good game the other night against the Caps. Continues to sort of try to make his case. I don't think he's fully made it yet for that third line center spot. I think we're all sort of, what's the word? Surprised at Matt Poitras last year. We were sort of, just taken aback by just how much he just grabbed a spot out of completely nowhere almost. It was he's really good, but he'll probably just go back to junior. And then he just grabs the spot and never let go of it. And again, I think there's more to see from Merkulov. He's hard. I mean, again, he's had 2 really productive years in Providence. That's what I keep going back to you do also need to see what you have with him. And I do think he is a little bit more responsible in his own zone. He's made strides in that regard. So what do you think of him and where he's at right now?
Yeah, I think, you mentioned his experience in the AHL and his production there. He's proven, he's maybe not shown. I would argue he's shown everything that he can show at that level, so to speak, whether he's able to jump up into the NHL level. Part of that's on him. Maybe he needs to do more to really seize the spot and make it, because you mentioned Matt Poitras last year. That one, I think everyone was buzzing after, 3 games, however many games he was in, you can't send this guy back down. It was apparent to everybody. And Merkulov, he's only played in 2 games, but he hasn't done that yet. And just based on the person, part of it's on him, but part of it's just, unseating a veteran that's there. It's based on all the guys that are, obviously they've got the hole at the right wing. They don't want to use him at wing. So if you're looking down at center, it's going to be hard to unseat whoever might be there. I don't know if they're going to lean with Frederick at center, like they've been using him at camp for the past week or so. if they're going to push him back to the wing and open it up for somebody else. Justin Brazeau, that he scored. Obviously, they have a good connection, so maybe that would be a good, Merkulov in the center, Brazeau on the right wing in that third line if that's able to fit somehow. But other than, he's really has to prove that he's better than the options that are already there, and I don't know if he's done that so far. Maybe he will, but I think he sort of needs to find that extra gear and push if he wants to earn that spot.
I like, again, you hit on it earlier with the Montgomery thing. Like, if Montgomery is not signed at the start of the year, is he really going to go into the year with like Matt Poitras second line right wing and Georgi Merkulov as the third line center? Like, that's a lot of young guys in legitimate roles. And for a coach that is, this team's a cup contender. We've talked about this a number of times throughout the offseason. Like, can you risk that? And again, like, you've got Trent Frederick, you've got Morgan Geekie. Those guys deserve prominent spots. Is that third line center? Is it Frederick and Geekie on the wings and Merkulov down the middle? You mentioned Brazeau, like, he's in the mix as well. Matt Poitras, like, if Geekie goes up to the second line, if Lysell is second line right wing, like
Tyler Johnson too. I mean,
Tyler
he's
Johnson,
veteran
yes.
TCO. I mean, it's probably going to have to wait until Swayman is signed if Johnson wants to wait that. I mean, it seems like he is, just based on, I think a few days ago they said he was telling the media that he had other teams interested, but he liked the situation in Boston, how it looked. Could be a thing where once they know the number with Swayman, that's when they get him on a minimum contract, and then that's the type of player that Montgomery or any coach that wants veteran production, proven players. He's going to be in the mix at least until they either send him away or they agree to sign him.
Yeah, Tyler Johnson, I forgot about him too. Like, he's in the mix as well. And from Sweeney's comments he made, prior to training camp, like, he seems like a guy they wanted in the offseason, just didn't really know their cap space situation. He's still around. They're like, oh, we'll easily take a flyer on him. Again, could be a third line center, could be a third line right wing, could be a second line right wing. Like, that's another guy. So that's why I think the onus is really on guys like Merkulov and Lysell. They can't just be really good. They've got to be better than established guys like Frederick and Geekie and Johnson, who the Bruins obviously like. I mean, Frederick's going into a contract year. Like, that guy's going to be firing this year. You need him in a prominent spot, whether that's third line center or third line left wing. So, again, I'm curious to see. I mean, we still have like less than 2 weeks of training camp. So there's still, a little bit of time for those guys to sort of separate themselves, but they got to get on it fast because time is of the essence. Time's also of the essence with another situation. We'll get to that in a second. First, a quick word from our friends over at Game Time. Fall is beginning, which means football is back. Nothing beats a college football atmosphere. And with both college and NFL games, who doesn't love a good tailgate? Get to the game with Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. This fall, my friends and I are going to the Patriots-Titans game in Tennessee. And how will we get tickets for the game? Game Time, of course. The super deal has been amazing to us in the past, and there's no doubt it will be great to us again. I just love the curated deals, which make it easier to find the best price on great seats. Some other features I love are the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time Picks curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. All-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. So, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Now, back to the show. So the Jeremy Swayman thing, Joe, isn't it fun? We're still talking about this. Like, it's my prediction was like right before camp or like early in training camp, and didn't come true. That prediction did not come to fruition. And instead we get Sweeney firing off bombs on day one, being like, all right, well, we might be here a while waiting for this. Ryan Whitney recently on Spit and Chicklets came out and sort of defended defended his honor against Don Sweeney, saying that Sweeney might be sort of, couching the truth a bit, defending his report. I think his initial report was like 4 years and 6.25 million per. Continued to call that a low ball. I mean, I think clearly the Swayman camp is talking to Whitney. To me, I mean, like just listening, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
So again, that's more going to him, going to Whitney. Again, assuming that's coming from the Swayman side. Where are you at with this situation? When do you think this gets done? What's sort of your take on this, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I was with you going into the first day of training camp. I was like, they'll work it out. They wanted to, fight down to the last minute once the team comes together in camp. I'm sure they'll, it seems like they're closer. That's what all the reports were saying. Like, better days ahead. They'll come to an agreement. And then Sweeney's like, well, we have until December 1st. And I'm like, wait, what? December 1st? Like, that's the
My
deadline
ears
you're going
up.
off of
I was
now?
like, December 1?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I mean, but you figure they'd, even say it like till opening night, we just need to throw them in or something like that. Hearing that and the way it's going and, no real momentum so far, maybe they'll swoop in at the last minute and, before opening night or before, they'll come to an agreement. Maybe we won't start the first couple games, but they'll work them in or something like that. I don't really know. I think it's just, I would be surprised if it goes all the way to December 1st, but I think that's sort of just his way of saying like, hey, we'll wait this out as long as we need to, sort of to Swayman's camp. Like, we're not, you're not going to force our hand. Swayman's going to want to play in the regular season when it comes around. So it seemed like more of a tactical media play, but yeah, it doesn't seem great, especially just given where the where the conversation has gone either way. I think ultimately it's going to serve both parties to come to an agreement sooner than later. So if it stretches into the regular season, I'd be surprised if it goes too far. But yeah, it's hard to read just based on the conflicting reports from all around, I'd say.
Yeah, and Sweeney definitely doesn't like a lot of the conflicting reports. That's putting it lightly. Last week, Haggs and I did a podcast titled "Could the Bruins End Up Trading Jeremy Swayman?" It was all Haggs driven. Haggs was all over the trading Jeremy Swayman thing. And then I did a podcast with Andrew Raycroft, and we were just talking kind of, breaking down the whole situation, this and that. And I think both got almost 100 comments on YouTube. And I gotta say, most of those comments were anti-Swayman. Rarely do you see that. Typically you see fans defending players. We hate the powers that be at the Bruins, Jeremy Jacobs, all that stuff. Don Sweeney, we hate Don Sweeney. I didn't see like any of that. And again, they're YouTube comments. They're just YouTube comments. I think we should don't read the YouTube comments. It's usually the thing, but we do often get nice ones. So it's nice to see, or funny ones at the very least. But I was kind of surprised. And again, that doesn't mean it's everybody in the Bruins world. But if, 150, 200 people feel that way and feel strongly enough to comment that on a YouTube video, you have to think a lot more feel the exact same way. They're just not going to, say anything about it. So I've been kind of fascinated at sort of the backlash against Swayman by a lot of people. And it's interesting because I don't know if I've said this publicly yet. I've said this in private to people. So forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but I said this to Haggs when we got off that podcast. I think, you hear a lot of the like Haggs, Felger, and Maz bashing Swayman, like completely bashing Swayman. And I agree. I don't think he is I don't think he's worth 9.5 million yet. I think that is a crazy ask to be asking at this point, if that's what he's asking, which is sort of what's been reported of sort of the McAvoy deal. But I also think it's sort of a difference in how generations view how they should get paid. That generation, which is only, you and I are similar in age. I'm 25. You're what, like 23?
23, yep.
23. Nailed it. And I think like the previous generations, and again, I was not a part of those. So if people want to come back at me for this, they're more than they can definitely do it. They're qualified to. Sort of was a time when you had to pay your dues before you maybe were paid what you were worth, or you had to pay your dues to earn like a good, salary and all that stuff. And I completely get that. Whereas our generation, and I saw it on Twitter recently with, SIDs. I don't know if you saw this, with younger SIDs being like, I'm not paid enough. This is just, this isn't livable. And you have older SIDs being like, I've never worked a day in my life. This is amazing. And I don't think either side's wrong. And I think our generation just looks at it, and Jeremy Swayman's my age, is 25, often looks at, I want to be paid what I'm worth immediately. I want to be paid I want to be paid more than what I'm worth immediately, because I'm working, and that's, this is my life, and you get one of it. And I find that to be an interesting juxtaposition. And again, I still firmly believe, I said 8x8 all off season. I think he'll eventually be worth 8x8. You start to go above 8 and you sort of get into that, I don't know if you can really justify that. There is a salary cap. But I don't know. That's been a thought I continuously have had, hearing a lot of different points of view on him getting paid. So far, I don't know if it's a generation. Maybe it is a little bit of a generational thing.
Yeah, I feel like there's kind of, a middle point for both those parts, because you see so many contracts in all sports where, hockey as well, where, a star player that's been with the team forever reaches the end of their contract. Different situation here, because Swayman's, 25. He's, entering his prime, ready to show what he can be. But the, other players, they'll get massive contract. Like, I'm thinking of, for my hometown team, the Capitals, they gave Nicholas Backstrom, I think, a 5-year, 4-year, $9.2 million per year deal when he was in his mid-30s, already showing signs of slowing down. And that was sort of like, oh, we're paying you this large contract because of what you did in the past. Like, we're compensating you after the fact, even though it may not be the most financially viable or the smartest business move today. And if I'm thinking of teams doing business, obviously that's great for the player. And, not every player is guaranteed to get that type of contract. And if you're wanting to do good business, wouldn't you want to pay someone maybe a little bit higher than what they're worth at the moment? But in the next 4 years, if you sign an 8-year deal in the next 4 years, those goalie contracts are only going to get higher just based on the salary cap finally going back up after COVID. Just give a little to get a little, I think, is that type of thing where, maybe you don't think he's worth that much, but if you think he's your, franchise goalie long term, you got to make some type of commitment. And obviously, if it, the 8-year contract, if he somehow falters in the lead role and you're stuck with that, albatross, I don't think it would get to that just based on what Swayman's shown already. But I think in one way or another, whether it's a 4-year deal, if that's what you're more comfortable with, or an 8-year deal, and that, it takes two sides to come to that agreement. But yeah, you don't want to give him $9 million, but if you're only paying him $6 a year and he wants $8, I think you kind of got to give that push and pull if you truly think that he can be the franchise goalie. Otherwise, you should trade him if you don't think that he can be that. And, I'm not a general manager, but that just sort of seems like the, proper way of thinking in a scenario like this, where he's shown what he can be. Try to meet him in the middle of that aspect, I'd say.
100%. And I think Pierre LeBrun reported the other day, they're still, eyeing a long-term contract, which again, I would assume is over 6 years. Even you mentioned Nicholas Backstrom, Torrey Krug here, I thought was an interesting case. And I think you see more and more guys when they become free agents at 29, 30, 31 years old, and they've been really good. But Krug was a great example of someone who had a great run up to when he was a free agent, but a long-term deal for that, for a undersized, smaller defenseman, how long is that offense going to last? And I think he was just ruled out for the entire year this year, which is so freaking sad. If anyone deserved a cup here, it was Torrey Krug. And I thought that was a good move by the Bruins in the sense of hey, go put that money elsewhere. And I think you're right. You see teams now becoming smarter with hey, we're not going to pay for past performance. We're going to pay for current. And that, again, I think McAvoy in 2019, was sort of, I had 1 year left, or maybe was not, looking for a new contract. And I think they signed him to a 3-year deal. And I remember at the time being no, sign him to 8 years. Do a deal that looks expensive now, but will look, cheaper long term. And they end up having to cough up 9.5 years later. So and I also think you have the element of, for so many years here, Brad Marchand took a hometown discount to be here, and so many other guys took hometown discounts Pastrnak didn't take a hometown discount. McAvoy didn't take a hometown discount. And I think, newer players coming up are like, why would I take a hometown discount? Like, pay me what I'm worth, and we'll find ways to win. We'll be able to do it. And I think Swayman fits in that camp of like, I'm not signing a hometown discount. Now the question is like, is he worth 9.5? That's where it gets a little crazy. I think you start to get over 8 and it's like, all right, this is getting into uncharted territory. I mean, if you had to value him right now as a goalie that's never played more than like 44 games in a season, ranked, I think his highest Vezina finish was like 7th, has never been a starter, probably is around what they allegedly offered him according to Ryan Whitney, which is 4 years, 6.25. Like, it probably is, that's basically double his pay from last year. But, again, in year 4 of that, is he going to be worth more than 6.25? Most definitely, probably.
Yeah.
So, again, I understand his camp, too, of like, hey, the cap's going up. I need to, to me, it's I think a 3 or 4 year deal is probably smartest for him. Sign that deal, 3 or 4 years around 6.5, 7 million. And then that next one, when the cap is officially up and other goalies have signed, that's when you kind of make your long-term solution. But I'd rather they sign him long-term now, so they're not having to pay out the nose for him in 3 or 4 years. So that's fun. It's a fun little situation in camp.
Yeah, which is why it's kind of, well, maybe not confusing, but it's kind of ironic that the reported offer from the Bruins was the shorter term deal for less money, where obviously if they feel like over those 3 to 4 years, he's not worth that investment, shorter, they can let him go after that. But I feel like if you're having those talks with him to be the long-term goalie, you got to have some belief that he is going to be the franchise goalie, and what he was able to string together in the playoffs, while it was a short period, shouldn't be discounted, especially on a playoff stage. I mean, that's just sort of, I don't know where my thought was going there, but that's
it's okay. I agree with, like, that's the thing is like, I don't, they drafted and developed him. He's their guy. This is not a goalie prospect coming in from out of town and he's been here for a year. And like, this is a guy you have had since 2017 in your system. I mean, I know he's at Maine for a while, but like, you drafted him in 2017. You've had him, you've been in contact with him ever since. You've gotten to shape him, all that stuff. Like, I think it's a pretty clear thing. Like, I think he is a top 10 goalie in the NHL at the very least. Like, I think that's where he is. And, is he right now a standard bearer for goalies in terms of contracts? No, I don't think he's there. He's not near that. But, in terms of what his ceiling is, top 10 goalie in the NHL. So, don't trade him. That's my biggest thing. Like, the trading stuff, I mean, like, obviously we got to talk about it, but like, trading to me, I don't think would be smart unless it was like a package deal, like for a Draisaitl or something. If that were to somehow happen, even though he just signed his long-term extension, like, I couldn't get behind that. The only other way I could is if you traded him to a terrible team that was like a shoo-in to get the first overall pick, and then you can get like James Higgins, and it's like, all right, well, that's worth it. Like, all right, fine. Like, you get a franchise Jack Hughes type center. I'm okay with that. But again, the chances of that happening are like 3%. So I'm not for trading Jeremy Swayman. But yeah, that's where we're at with that. We're still talking about Swayman. There's always comments being like, can you please stop talking about this? And I'm like, well, it's the team's number 1 goalie. Not much I can do. Like, we do have to talk about it. It is a big topic. So Joe, what can the people look forward to from you through the rest of camp and into the start of the season?
Just doing stuff with NHL.com, and tweeting from practices, reporting from there, writing stuff up for the website. When the regular season starts, I'll probably be doing more regular writing from the games and stuff like that. But that's as far as Bruins goes, that's where you'll find my stuff.
Perfect. Well, people can go look forward to that, and that is this week's Bruins Beat. I'm Evan Marinofsky, Bruins Beat listeners. Have a great rest of your week.